Good afternoon. My name is Thurston County Commissioner Tye Menser, and today I'm having coffee with Jackie Valesco, who is the program manager of Thurston County's new Resource Hub. Thank you for being here today, Jackie.
Well, thank you so much for the chance to talk about it.
So, a little history on this concept. The idea for the Resource Hub came from a few different places in Thurston County. Our Innovative Justice Committee had the idea and looked at some property spaces and talked about the need for this concept. I, as a candidate in 2018, had seen the opening of the Pierce County Court Resource Center, and I was interested in something like this for Thurston County. And all of that came together, I want to say, in mid-2019, where we started to really put the concept into practice, into motion. So, while this space, this Resource Hub is new, it's quite a bit of time in the making, and you're pretty new here, Jackie, so I'm excited to see it get off the ground and what you can do. You're the first program manager, though, so why don't you tell us what inspired you to want to become the new first inaugural Resource Hub manager?
Yeah, well, some of the history you're describing is a lot of what inspired me. I've had the chance to tour the facility up in Tacoma, and I just thought that it was such an incredible opportunity to kind of take a look at not just sort of people in the sense of looking at behavior or choices they've made, but looking at people in the fuller context of their life and thinking about, well, gosh, how can maybe we have some resources available in an accessible way that lets people kind of have those opportunities to get things back on track without kind of presuming that people are isolated as who they are to what their behavior looks like. And so that work is really important to me. And the opportunity to do that here in Thurston County is very, very exciting.
Well, let's start with kind of the basics, the Resource Hub. What is it? Who does it serve? And when we talk about the folks that we're trying to bring in here and connect the services, who are we talking about?
So we are talking about folks with behavioral health needs who are impacted by the justice system. And kind of the larger version of that context is a lot of folks who are coming to the courthouse anyway. We know for sure they can get there. We know for sure in a lot of cases they have to be there. So we wanted to have an on-site, urgent and accessible space for people to be able to come and visit and get connected to community-based resources, to start thinking about how maybe outside of their legal needs, we can start looking at their life holistically and get them connected to stuff.
Now, when you say on-site, I want to point out that we are sitting in the space, which is Building 4, which is 1 block away from the Thurston County Court complex. Mm-hmm. So we consider this to be just, you walk down the street and you can connect. Now, why would something like this be needed for the individuals you described?
So in my understanding or kind of thoughts on the matter is that a lot of folks who in a community like Thurston County, where that's actually really quite resource abundant, can't always access things where they already exist because they're limited by hours or by childcare or just by not knowing where to go or how to get their transportation, that kind of stuff. And so being able to have things accessible here so close to the courthouse can make it more manageable for folks if they're here anyway. They don't have to make it all over town to be able to get connected.
So when we talk about getting connected to who? What are some of the initial partner agencies, and will there be more as time goes on? And what's the plan for all of that?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about because kind of like you were mentioning earlier with the history of the hub, there's been a lot of enthusiasm and sort of momentum behind the project. I'm kind of jumping in at the most gratifying time because it's actually manifesting. But a lot of community partners have felt this was a good idea and have been behind the concept. So when we were deciding kind of how to open and when felt like a good time to do that, we really wanted at least one strong committed partner in each life domain, I guess, where somebody could use some help. So we broke that.
What does a life domain mean?
So a life domain would just be like
examples.
Sure. So it could be housing, employment, behavioral health, medical care, those kinds of things. And those are actually the categories we focused on when thinking about the hub. And at this point, we do have committed partners in each of those sort of slices of the life pie, ready to be represented on-site at the hub. And those partners, I don't want to just give you too much of a laundry list, but I do want to shout out to the partners we've got involved. Absolutely. Because they put a lot of work into it. On the provider side, We have Northwest Resources for housing and behavioral health needs. We'll have Pack Mountain Workforce Development Council and Morningside for connections to employment and supporting people with those needs. We will have connection to public benefits through the Department of Social and Health Services. Right now, they won't be able to join us until the fall, but they've kind of given me the scoop on how to assist people in the meantime with that. We have connections within healthcare to Molina, and then within, what have I missed? I gave you all my domains.
Housing, substance.
Housing and behavioral health. So behavioral health is Northwest Resources and also Providence Behavioral Health. So that's kind of our starting group. And there's been a lot of enthusiasm and generosity among those partners who are totally excited to connect. The folks that they will be serving on site at the hub are probably very similar to folks who might have turned up at their offices. And so they're really glad to come out and make their services accessible here.
A piece of history that you alluded to that I would like to kind of elaborate on is that before we launched this concept and spent money putting it into making it reality, we had multiple stakeholder meetings with the different potential partners. And you mentioned how there were interest and support from the partners before we got going. And that's absolutely true. And I sat on those work groups where we just brainstormed this idea, and we really wanted to ensure that the resources in the community would be supportive of this and willing to participate. They said yes, and now they're stepping up. And so I'm glad you were able to call some of them out here today.
Yes. I'm really excited about that as well. I think I actually owe you a big thank you, and a big thank you to all the folks who sort of did some of that legwork ahead of time, because it's not easy work getting a new program off the ground, but it made it much easier work for me to kind of come in and know that there was already this excitement built up around it and behind it. And so those are the providers who are involved. Some stakeholders on the referral side, so folks who might be sending participants over to the hub to get connected. There's been a lot of tremendous support from different county departments as well. So public defense and the prosecutor's office are both really excited to see things launch and are happy to send folks over. Pretrial services will be making referrals, sending folks away. The probation team was really receptive and excited about the opportunity for folks they're working with. And we're just expanding that further and further into district court, beyond probation into district court and some other areas as well.
Excellent. Well, one of the reasons I was excited about this concept was because there is research that shows that money spent toward helping folks in the justice system re-enter, it's called re-entry services, moving from an incarceration situation into a more normalized living situation, provides good community benefit back, and helps reduce criminal recidivism, which is fancy word for going through a cycle of committing crime over and over again and going and touching the system. So obviously that's one thing we'll be looking at, but expanding on that, what do you think, what are you looking to see as outcomes, and how will the community know that this program is being effective?
I think reducing recidivism is one of the biggest milestones that I really hope to achieve. Because just seeing what that looks like, kind of like you're saying, when people maybe exit incarceration, or even if they weren't incarcerated and they're a person who is under supervision on pretrial services, navigating resources on your own can be a big challenge. So having somewhere to go where you can kind of get some support, and even knowing what's available to you, is huge. And it's really hard to navigate those things on your own. It's also really hard when you're someone who maybe has lived perpetually in a state of crisis, to try and imagine yourself as, safe or stable or some things like that. And so I think if we start seeing that people who might have otherwise had a cyclical experience in the legal system maybe make a mistake and get connected to a resource that helps them with whatever context surrounded what happened, we'll start to see a lot less folks more than once.
Which could mean fewer criminal cases filed, or fewer heads in the jail, or there's all sorts of things we can try to measure as we see if this is having the effect that we're anticipating.
That makes perfect sense.
So I'm sitting here in this new space, and I see an office and a desk and windows and computer terminals. Can you explain what a visit to the Resource Hub would look like for an individual coming in for the first time? Can customers expect that they're going to come here once, or will there be follow-ups by phone, or how will an individual accessing this resource kind of go through that process?
Yes, that's a great question. I think step one is walking through the door. What people can expect. I kind of mentioned who the hub was intended to serve, but we're trying to stay away the best we can from a lot of eligibility screening. Nobody's going to be turned away who needs help. So people can come in. We'll have sort of an optional demographics form that people could fill out. People have different levels of comfort about sharing personal information, so that's voluntary. But it does help us better understand who's coming to the hub and how we can make sure that services are the most relevant and that we're really making sure that we're equitably accessible to everyone, right? So that's a form they can fill out. And then we'll also have sort of a needs passport that will almost be a menu of services that kind of shows like, hey, sounds like you're here because you need some help. These are the kind of things we help with. Which ones would you like to start with? And that'll be sort of a conversation starter for a person who's coming in. They might talk to myself. They could talk with a service provider representative on site. Everybody will kind of be trained just to welcome folks and sort of get those things taken care of. And that's when people can really share, maybe to whatever degree they're comfortable, what's going on and what they'd really like help with. Because it's a pretty vulnerable thing to ask for help sometimes. And so sometimes without a little conversation and human connection, it's kind of hard to just be like, I need help with my housing, or I need a behavioral health assessment. Those are tough things to talk about. So that'll sort of be a launch pad to help people prioritize, like if they need more than one thing, where they'd like to start, those kinds of things. Then based on an individual person's situation, if there's a provider on site that represents any of those needs, they can start talking to those people in real time while they're here. We'll have drop-in assessments available for behavioral health. And for the most part, to whatever degree we can, people could become enrolled in different community programs on site and get that ball rolling. So someone, if they come into the resource hub once, might be connected to a couple of providers. Maybe they want to come back another time because now they have different needs, or now they feel more comfortable talking about needs they didn't mention the first time, and they could get connected to those then as well. I also don't think I've mentioned yet that we'll try and have some basic needs stuff available on site. So we'll have food bags from the food bank available that are shelf stable and don't require cooking. So if somebody didn't have a place to prepare a meal, they could still eat and benefit from that. And we'll have some basic household stuff on site, some hygiene items, those kind of things for people as well. So also if somebody wants to drop in and maybe they're not ready for a connection to a long-term resource, but they've got some immediate needs and they'd like some help.
How about benefits? I don't think you mentioned that as one of your life domains. Is that going to be included in this?
Yes. So when you say benefits, do you mean public benefits?
Public benefits, like if someone, everything from a driver's license to eligibility for Medicaid to, all the different government programs that maybe someone's entitled to, but they don't know about or they've never applied for.
Yes. So we'll be able to do an eligibility screening for all Department of Social and Health Services programs, which includes SNAP benefits.
SNAP is food.
Food stamps, yep. And then also there's TANF, which is assistance for families. There's also some different programs to DSHS that can sometimes benefit people who are trying to maybe start a new job, but they have childcare issues and they kind of need some support in the meantime. So we can do some screening for all of those things. We can get Apple Health reinstated for anybody whose health insurance was perhaps paused while they were incarcerated or maybe lapsed for some other reason. We can do same-day reinstatement of those benefits. And then Molina, I mentioned as a partner, would be...
Molina is a MCO.
Yes,
which is essentially an insurance provider for medical care.
Yes, and they are able to, through a partnership with the healthcare authority, get people signed up for Medicaid if they're eligible. And then after that, they have care navigators that would help people navigate that care that they've been enrolled in, if they need help finding a primary care provider, or if they need dental care, or things like that.
So this navigation that you're describing, if somebody walks in the door while the hub is open, there will be somebody to greet them and to potentially connect.
Yes. So we are just kicking off, and
tell us about how the launch is going to unfold.
So ideally, it will look just like this. We're starting with what we're calling a soft launch because, like you mentioned, this has been a really good idea for a long time, and it was really important to me that we kind of moved those ideas to action. And we didn't want to get too caught up in being perfect right away. And there's also a lot of information that comes back from members of the community that's some of the most valuable feedback. So we kind of wanted to do a soft launch and just try, like, here's what we thought would be really helpful. Let's get people in the door and hear what they have to say, and then use that feedback to build an even better version of what we're trying to achieve. So we're starting with part-time hours. We're going to do Tuesdays through Thursdays from noon to 4 to get past a couple of holiday Mondays. And then starting July 11th, we'll add Mondays as well.
Noon to 4.
Noon to 4. So we'll end up being Monday through Thursday, noon to 4, starting after the 4th of July holiday. And prior to that, beginning the 21st of June will be Tuesday through Thursday from noon to 4. And we'll at first have sort of providers available on a rotating basis, because we need to make sure there's room for providers to be comfortable. They're donating that time because they feel like it's a good cause. And so we want them to be comfortable in the space, and we want to have room for folks to come in and get what they need. So we'll start on a rotating basis. So not every provider will be available every day, but we'll have a connection point to every provider every day that we're open, even if it means a phone call because they're not present on site today.
I'm hoping over time those providers won't even see it as a donation of time, because it'll be an efficient way for them to connect to the people that they are trying to serve.
That's exactly right. And I think also over time, as the hub grows and scales, I would love to be operating at full-time hours with a representative from each partner there every day or hour that the hub is open.
That's something that we can build towards. So looking long-term, do you see the Resource Hub promoting things like broader things like community safety in the community? And how does that, what's the connection there that people can grab onto?
I do think that that will be true. And I kind of have two answers to that. And the first one is that, when people are struggling with their behavioral health, or if they're struggling with housing, or if they're struggling with just kind of making ends meet in their life, it doesn't always put people in the best decision-making space. It sometimes puts people in positions where they have to make decisions for their own health and safety that aren't always the best decisions in a community-based setting. And so with that type of support available, it takes that pressure off of people. And so it puts them in a safe place where they can start making decisions from a long-term perspective, and maybe less from a crisis type of perspective. And then I think the other piece is that people who are struggling are also members of this community. And if their health and safety is improved, everyone's health and safety is improved.
And hopefully this can dovetail with new resources from the state regarding behavioral health, crisis system, and our new 988 line, which launches July 16th, which is a national crisis line regarding mental health, trying to bring the right resources out to the right situations.
Yeah, and I think that there are so many similar types of programs at the moment. Shows where we're headed in terms of understanding this is almost a best practice in trying to understand how to keep communities safe and people safe.
Anything else you want people to know about the Resource Hub that we haven't covered?
Oh gosh. Well, I got to give my shameless plug that if you are listening to this and feel like you could use some help, you can come in anytime, Building 4 of the courthouse complex. And if any providers are listening and thinking, well, how cool would it be to spend some of my time there? Please get in touch. It would be lovely to sort of grow the hub to the next phase.
Okay, wonderful. Well, for everyone watching out there, thanks for tuning in. If you want to keep up with your local government, subscribe to the Thurston County YouTube channel. All Board of County Commissioners meetings are live streamed there, including work sessions, board meetings, Board of Health. Really appreciate your time to stick with this, and hopefully maybe in a year or so we'll come back with a report for the community, and it'll hopefully be a report of success. Thank you so much, Jackie. I've been really excited about what energy you've brought to this project.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.